Another provocation from Pakistan, this hours after Prime Minister Modi warned Pakistan that there will be consequences for its backing of terrorism in India. I'm Barkha Dutt, you're with the Mojo Story. Our focus today is on what is unfolding in Jammu and Kashmir. After the upsurge in terror attacks in the Jammu region, attacks that clearly bear the imprint of the Pakistan army, comes an attack by Pakistan's BAT team, Border Action Team, along the line of control in Kupwara in North Kashmir. According to the army statement, one Pakistani quote-unquote intruder has been killed. In the army's foiling of this attack, the weapons you see on your screen have been recovered. But tragically, one Indian soldier has died in the line of duty, and among the 4 others injured, there is also a captain of the Indian military. This assault by Pakistan's BAT team comes just hours after Pakistan received a sharp warning from the Indian Prime Minister from Kargil, just a few kilometers from the line of control, as India commemorate 25 years of Operation Vijay Divas, the day of victory by the Indian Army against Pakistan. What is actually going on here? Every expert, every military veteran talks about how what is unfolding is well beyond the norm of what security forces have been combating in the form of terrorism. Pakistan's army is now clearly front and center involved in trying to inflame the situation both along the international border and the line of control. Let me welcome our expert panel today as we look at this grim situation. Lieutenant General Satish is with us. He's the former General Officer commanding of the 15th Corps in the Kashmir Valley. Welcome to the program. Sushant, Sareen, one of India's foremost strategic analysts, is with us. Welcome, Sushant, seeing you after a long time. Also joining us is military veteran General Dhruv Katoch, who's, of course, with the India Foundation. Welcome back, sir. And also joining us is Army Commander General Shukla. Welcome to the program, sir. Welcome, everybody. I want to actually start by playing out what the Prime Minister said, because the context is important. What's happened today hasn't happened after the Prime Minister's comments, but certainly it's come hours after this warning to Pakistan from the Prime Minister from Kargil. Take a look.
आप जानते हैं, भारत उस समय शांति के लिए प्रयास कर रहा था। बदले में पाकिस्तान ने फिर एक बार अपना अविश्वासी चेहरा दिखाया। लेकिन सत्य के सामने असत्य और आतंक की हार हुई। साथियों, पाकिस्तान ने अतीत में जितने भी दुष्प्रयास किए, उसे मुंह की खानी पड़ी है। लेकिन पाकिस्तान ने अपने इतिहास से कुछ नहीं सीखा है। वो आतंकवाद के सहारे, प्रॉक्सी वॉर के सहारे अपने आप को प्रासंगिक बनाए रखने का प्रयास कर रहा है। लेकिन आज जब मैं उस जगह से बोल रहा हूं जहां आतंक के आकाओं को मेरी आवाज सीधे सुनाई पड़ रही है, मैं आतंकवाद के इन सरपरस्तों को कहना चाहता हूं कि उनके नापाक मंसूबे कभी कामयाब नहीं होंगे।
Hours after that warning from the Prime Minister came the assault, the attempt to attack an army bunker along the line of control. And as I said, the phrase used by the army in its official release is intruder. But what is quite clear now is that increasingly the Pakistan army is trying something what they're trying. Specifically, we don't know. We're going to try and understand from our experts here. Before I come to all the generals, Sushant, I'll start with you. What do you make of what's going on? You know, when you look at what's been happening in the Jammu region, clearly, again, the imprint of the Pakistan army is there. But in the last few weeks, more soldiers have died in the line of duty than terrorists have been killed as Pakistan's military tries to open a full-fledged front in the Pir Panjal. Now you have the line of control inflamed. What's going on?
So, Barkha, in your initial comments, you said many analysts are saying that what is happening is beyond the norm, that the Pakistan army is becoming way more deeply involved. When was it not deeply involved in terrorism in Kashmir? It always has been, number one.
But it's used proxies, right? It seems to be using its own men now. That's what I meant.
No, how do we know those were not its own men? Even the proxies are their own men. I think these are needless distinctions that we make to give them some kind of plausible deniability. There is none, as far as I am concerned. I follow the Godfather dictum that even if lightning strikes, it's their fault. It's as simple as that. Now, the thing is, what is our response? Number one, I think our response has always been reactive. I'll give you one example. When Pulwama happens, we take 2 weeks to do a Balakot. The Pakistanis respond within 2 days. And then we don't up the ante, which we should have at that point of time. Even today, I think we should have expected what is happening for a couple of reasons. One, the Pakistanis have their back to the wall. They think that the Indians have kind of written them off, that these guys don't count for anything, and they need to make a demonstration, a show of force to India that they are very much in the fray, that they are not down and out. Number two, there is a domestic compulsion for the Pakistanis because the Pakistan army is being criticized left, right, and center within Pakistan and especially within Punjab. So they need to rake up tensions with India, not get into a bigger conflict, but rake up tensions because that they think will unite the people behind them. Number three, you have a new army chief in Asim Munir. Please remember, he was the ISI chief when Balakot happened, or rather when Pulwama happened. And he is a man with a somewhat jihadist mindset, very different from what Bajwa was. And what he's trying to do is he's trying to see how far he can put the Indians. Very clear. It was always going to happen. Many of us were warning. What is happening in Jammu is partly a dynamic of how terrorism has operated in Jammu and Kashmir. But again, what has happened today is even a bigger dare from what happening from the Pakistani side. But importantly, Barkha, if, for example, we are saying that the Prime Minister makes a speech yesterday, and then within 24 hours, there's a bat action in the Kupwara sector, then it tells you how prepared the Pakistanis are to ratchet up tensions and to turn the tap on terrorism as far as India is concerned. And this is something which should be bothering us. Now, what happens very often in India is that we seem to think, okay, fine, we've got 5-6 months of peace. We start declaring victory. We claim that everything is done and over with. And then, the Pakistanis surprise us. They've always surprised us, and they're surprising us once again. And what surprises me is how gullible either we are or how unprepared we are for these surprises, even though warnings are continuously issued by people who study this issue that please don't take this lightly. Please, there is a threat coming. One final point. I am of the view that, this nonsense that we have internalized, that if they cross a certain threshold, only then we will do something. That is the biggest and the most brainless thing I've ever heard in my life. Increasingly, even I used to think that, but I think I've developed a brain since then. Because how do you define a threshold? Do you define a threshold when 5 soldiers are killed and 2 or 3 of them are beheaded? Is that your threshold? Is it when 40 people die, your threshold? Is it when a civilian bus is attacked? Is that your threshold? What the hell is your threshold? And then what is your preparation that within hours, if not a couple of days, that there is going to be a massive and a robust response to what the Pakistanis have done? Do we have any? We have 3 generals, very distinguished men, all of them. I would like to put this question to them. What has been our response? So I think there is this problem which has always been there from the Indian side, that, we keep waiting. Okay, fine, we'll roll with the blow another time. I don't think we can afford to do this endlessly. And one last point, Barkha. Please remember, strategically, we are in a much better position right now. The Pakistanis have always done this, playing this brinkmanship. They are at a place where they cannot play this brinkmanship for the reasons we expected them not to do anything. That is also the reason why we need to play this game better than them, which means that they are already occupied on their western front. So we need to ratchet up tensions like never before on the eastern front to squeeze them on two fronts, number one. And number two, their economy is on the ropes. We need to increase the cost for the economy hell of a lot more than what we have done so far, so that you squeeze them even more. So please do not follow the Prithviraj Chauhan syndrome that, okay, my enemy is down and out, let me pick him up once again, let me be chivalrous. There is no chivalry with barbarians.
No chivalry with barbarians. Let me take some of Sushant's very trenchant questions to the three generals now. I'll start with you, General Shukla. Sushant says Pakistan has, surprised us despite warnings. I specifically remember a few days ago, you and I were on a program with some other distinguished military veterans in a different context, but we were looking at Jammu, we were looking at other challenges. And the point made by all of you was that in the run-up to the Kargil anniversary, Pakistan was going to ratchet up tensions, right? We've seen schools within cantonment areas shut down as a matter of precaution. I don't know if we can use the word surprise. I think Sushant's point is we all knew that there is going to be some sort of attempted escalation. What are we doing about it? Now, of course, we all know that what we're doing about it can't always be said in public. And just because everything is not said in public, it doesn't mean nothing is happening. But do respond to everything that Sushant has said. General Shukla, I'll start with you.
So, I agree with Sushant's primary premise that, in terms of what he calls our readiness levels and all and so forth, there is scope for improvement. But let me just put the whole thing in perspective. See, what has happened today is what I think we all know, General Dhruv, General Katoch would know. From media report, it appears to me a BAT action, what we call a border action team action, which is a mix of their SF and terrorists who attack, posts along the line of control. And coming on the back of the spate of terror attacks, it does seem that, Pakistan's proxy war is in full flow once again, if it ever ended. And all that talk of General Bajwa's geoeconomics and all was a big fudge. The point, is it has, not that it has not happened before. When, because of Kargil, there was dislocations in our terror grid, all these kind of things happened. I remember I was the G1 ops in Akhnoor when almost an army commander was shot. There was a terror attack on Kaluchak. This whole business of terrorists finding refuge in a forest, so operational Sarvinash was done. I remember General Idda was the 16 Corps commander. So what we are seeing now is, the widening of the arc, escalatory spiral from the hinterland to the LC. The point remains that the Indian Army will take care of it. It has taken care of it in the past. Now, the question that Sushant raises has to be linked to an escalatory ladder. See, when it's not that things didn't happen. When we did a series of things along the LC onto Balakot, did he back off? Of course he did. He backed off for a while, and therefore we had great peace along the line of control. Now, it is very difficult for people like me from the outside to tell those who are in command now as to what they should do by way of escalation. The first BAT action, should you do a Balakot? The responses have to be escalatory. But yes, if Sushant is saying that we are allowing the same thing to happen again, could we have done better? We could have. What has happened primarily? Now, this is linked to the larger question. And here I have a view that this Pakistan-China nexus, it's not a nexus. It is a deep military alliance. I do not have proof, but I have a very strong hunch. Moment something happens along the LACs, so you move RR sector out, you vacate the terror grid, and these series of things now start happening. Now, if you have to reconstruct the terror grid, it takes a long time. It takes a long time to build networks. It is going to take 6-8 months. I have no doubt that this whole thing will be stabilized, but it will take a while. So the lesson here primarily is this, that see, when it comes to the valley and these areas, technology cannot replace terror. We were told that time that when we vacate the grid, paramilitary will come in. The paramilitary is not up to it. So the point is that the grid has got weakened. So we see now the Pakistanis back in business. They will be set right. We must link it to the larger issues. Now, here is the larger issues are what? And here we must not, if we take a slightly 10,000 feet view, we must realize that India's strategic adversariality is indeed great. You cannot do this. You know, Pakistan remains a pest and China is the actual threat. But if you shift focus this side and that side, that is what he'll make you do. So there you need, you know, larger issues, like I've been saying for a while, finessing our strategic deterrence, raising defense budgets, because we do not have, you know, the luxury of switching from China to Pak to China. I'll give you just one more example. Just after 26/11, I was in MO Directorate, and a distinct decision was taken to rebalance to the northern borders. It got interrupted, or before 26/11, it got interrupted by 26/11 and this whole Pakistan focus. And then we rebalanced after Galwan. We should have rebalanced before Galwan. So the point is that these Pak-China nexus is an intimate military alliance. I have a strong hunch they do it in concert. And so, I mean, could our preparedness have been better? Certainly. But, you know, Pakistan remains a pest. What they are doing has been done in the past. We'll get the better of them.
Okay, I want to pick up this, you know, coupled with what General Shukla has said. Sushant's question, General Dua, what is our threshold? And actually, it's a very, Sushant seems to imply that, you know, you can't arbitrarily decide that, you know, these many lives is what our threshold is. But equally, when it is an instrument of a country's state policy to inflict terror on India, which is the Pakistan state's policy, then do you react every time? What is the appropriate reaction? Do you react by opening another front for them instead of allowing them in concert with China to open two fronts for us? General Dua.
I agree with Sushant that it is very difficult to define a threshold in empirical terms. In fact, I have said that at a couple of channels myself. You know, how many, sorry to say, use the word, but how many deaths is enough and how many kills are enough. I think you also have to see the larger context. Talk of 2016, when in response to Uri, India launched a surgical strike. That year, Pathankot had happened. That year earlier, EDI building, where was a 6-storied building, was taken over by suicide terrorists on outskirts of Srinagar in a place called Pampur. 66 hostages were taken. It took us 2 days to clear the mess there. It happened again the second time after a couple of months. There was a series of such incidents. So I suppose the context also defines the threshold and not just the empirical number of kills or number of encounters. Allow me to make another point, Barkha. What we are seeing now, over the last couple of months, what we are seeing, or let me start again. What is happening in Kashmir over the last couple of days? We've seen a couple of encounters. Today is very sad. We lost a soldier as well in a bad action. What has been happening in Jammu region for the last couple of months and what is happening in Kashmir in the last couple of weeks are two different things. In my way of looking at things, what is happening in Jammu region is a concerted action on the part of Pakistan to activate dormant areas. I will not repeat the points that have already been made. The area has been dormant. It has had comparative peace, and hence there has been thinning out of forces, of agencies, etc. And they are trying to activate the dormant areas in Jammu region, and we've seen all the encounters. What is happening in Kashmir now on the LOC? It is almost a cyclic thing that happens every year. When snow melts, this is the time that activity picks up along the LOC, whether it is infiltration bids, violence in the hinterland, or bad actions. This happens now. Yes, it could have been timed along with the Kargil Vijay Divas for the purpose of making a statement. To respond to one of the points Sushant made in terms of our preparedness, I'm not trying to bat for anybody, but the fact remains that on a long 770 kilometers of LOC, while all soldiers are always prepared, but when infiltration bits take place, the infiltrators have the initiative. At some places, they will have some success, and especially in a bad action strike and go back. But this bad action, unlike many bad actions, has been a good one from the defender's point of view. We've actually managed to foil their attempt, though our soldiers got wounded. About the last point I want to make is about how to impose costs on Pakistan. We need to have a better, larger strategy instead of these tactical responses. And the larger strategy, we've already heard two speakers speak about China-Pakistan nexus or collusion. But the point is, we need to make it impose costs on Pakistan. That can take many shapes. We can think about it. I'm sure perhaps those in service and the leadership is thinking about it. But just to rattle off a few, for instance, we have a ceasefire on the LOC. Is that ceasefire, it does benefit all those who live on the LOC, soldiers as well as civilians on both sides. It does benefit them. But, I mean, if we want to raise the cost for Pakistan, because Pakistan is they are also embroiled on their western front, so we can increase the cost for them on their eastern front. We need to think of using all approaches or using all instruments of power, whether it is the economic angle or the diplomatic instrument of power. We need to increase the cost for Pakistan in every aspect to deter them to take these kind of actions on the LOC.
Let me bring in General Katoch before I go back to Sushant with many questions that the initial comments have raised. General Katoch, I think the point about China cannot be ignored. And when everybody talks about, increasing the cost for Pakistan, making them react on two fronts instead of one. But if there is, as we all seem to agree, a kind of cohesion between Pakistan and China, it does complicate things for us. And then this point about rebalancing the security grid in a way that, not by falling back on supplementing with paramilitary troops, but rebalancing it to where it's really needed. Is that the answer? Because we should say that all of Eastern Ladakh is now using up troops in a way that didn't have to a few years ago because of China's provocations.
Thank you, Barkha. Barkha, I think, firstly, let me deal with the Chinese bit first, China has imposed a cost on us. There's absolutely no denying that fact. But at the same time, we must realize we have also imposed a cost on China, and we are better prepared to take that cost. I'm not sure if the Chinese are very comfortable to keep 50,000 troops in those high altitude areas, which, those young boys or those young Chinese boys, they are not very comfortable there. And we can take it. We've been living in those areas for a very long time. The Chinese haven't. So as far as that bit is concerned, I think we'll handle China. And I think this China bit, what will China do or something? China has done what it can. You see, and we have stopped them there. So now if China wants a confrontation, well, so be it. But I want to get down now so that the China thing aside, right? As far as Pakistan is concerned, the question is not what we should do to stop Pakistan. I think let us reverse the question and ask, why does Pakistan still continue to do it? And I think the answer lies is because they don't expect any strong response from India. You see, they think they can get away with it. In this particular case,
why would they think that after Balakot, after the surgical strikes? General Dua was involved in those surgical strikes after the Uri terror attack. General Shukla has spoken about Balakot. Why do you say that Pakistan doesn't expect a strong reaction?
You see, because they are carrying out small-scale actions which they are trying to attribute to various organizations which they have propped up. They've given them very I'm just forgetting that organization, which is an offshoot
Yes,
of the
yes, Kashmir Tigers, Kashmir Tigers.
Stuff like that. I mean, they're giving it localized names and giving them the
Correct.
status of freedom fighters, etc., and trying to portray it as a movement from the sons of the soil. So on the world opinion, they've got some sort of they can claim that, listen, these aren't ours, and India is unnecessarily ratcheting up the show. Now, they've got Chinese support. There's absolutely no doubts about that. And China may have also told them, please ratchet up some pressure. I have a feeling it is not just China. China is certainly one part of it. And I think even the West, when I'm looking at the United States and the NATO, I think they're also quite concerned. And they are ratcheting up this pressure simply to pressurize India on the Russian front. The Russian, the war between Russia and Ukraine. And the Americans have been very, very disappointed, and so have the Israelis and so have the others, to say that, listen, why does India still continue with its stance or neutral stance with Russia? Because if India pulls out, then Russia has got much larger concerns than it would otherwise have. This is one. So I think for some reason, have they been given the nudge by the intelligence agencies of the US? Because even if you noticed, when you're looking at the election campaign which was fought here, you're seeing a similar sort of thing playing out now in the United States. Those statements which are coming, democracy in danger, and if Narendra Modi is elected, this will be the last election which India will have. And on the American side, they're saying if Trump is elected, there'll be the last election which India will have. And there are many similarities like that. So I think there are larger geopolitical forces at play which Pakistan is banking on. But let me get down to the crux of it now. I mean, the way I look at it. You see, the question is, I have been arguing about this in my writings also. It is a two-sided response. Two things have to happen. One is a statement given by the Prime Minister, as a declaratory statement. The way President Jimmy Carter gave in the 70s or 80s, I think that time, when he spoke of the Persian Gulf as being of American interest, and they will do whatever they have to guard it. That became the American doctrine, and they implemented it. So I had advocated, that there has to be an Indian doctrine too, and it has to be enunciated by a person no less than the Prime Minister to state that any of these acts will be treated as an act of war and will be responded to accordingly. Now, that statement has come about. Now, the second part has to be seen. You see, even if one drone crosses over, because we know it has been done by the Pakistan military, the ceasefire has been violated. When these bad groups or terrorist groups come from across the line of control, it is a terrorist action. And I think any person who gives support to that action is a legitimate target. Now it is a legitimate target based on the statement of the Prime Minister. It is a legitimate target, and those posts which are involved in providing that support, they are enemy and they can be destroyed, and they should be destroyed.
Okay.
Now, obviously, this will lead to escalation. No, just one more minute. This will lead to escalation, but that's the whole purpose. You see, if every time we are scared, like I was speaking to a bunch of students and they said, sir, agar hum kar denge, to fir hamare bhi log marenge. Abhi ye डर के ये लड़ाई नहीं लड़ी जा सकती है. There are going to be costs for India. We will bear those costs, but we will break this country. If that message goes across, they will think 20 times before sending one person across. After the Prime Minister's declaratory intent, we need ground action, and that will make that is the only way we can stop further actions. Barkha.
So actually, let me pick up the last point that you made and take that to Sushant. Because Sushant, you started your comments with the question, what is our threshold? Increase the cost. The point is that we all seem to be acknowledging that there is going to be an inevitable escalation that, as General Katoch mentioned, comes with costs for India. Two, there have been responses like the surgical strikes across the line of control. General Dua, led some of those ops. General Shukla has spoken about Balakot. It's not that these responses have not happened. So are we saying that we are going to be in a perennial state of no war, no, well, we're already no war, no peace, but in a perennial state of military response? Because that's what seems inevitable now.
Yeah, the short answer to your question is yes. It's an endless war. And you have to be prepared to fight it endlessly if you want a chance of survival. Otherwise, the other side is wanting to overwhelm you by tiring you out. So you have to be prepared that, yes, this will carry on. Look, you might get a few brief pauses when you
Oh, did we just lose Sushant there? Sushant, can you hear us? Yeah, we lost you. We lost you. Sushant, we lost you briefly. Just repeat your point. You said it's an endless war, and then we lost you. So pick up from there.
Yeah, so what I'm saying is that yes, this is going to be an endless war, and you have to be prepared to fight it, because otherwise you will, the other side thinks that they can tire you out or they can scare the hell out of you and overwhelm you. So I think we need to be prepared on that count. Number one. Number two, look, even when Balakot happened or the surgical strikes happened, that will buy you maybe some temporary pause. Maybe a few months, maybe a year or more. Balakot bought you more than a year or so. It buys you that kind of peace for some time, or non-combative or non-hostile environment for some time. But then it starts off all over again, because you are dealing with an unreconstructed, unreformed Pakistani state, which is increasingly becoming jihadist in its outlook. So you have to understand your adversary to be able to fight with it. Unfortunately, out here, we are more interested in puppy jappi and all kinds of other nonsensical stuff that, we do not understand what the enemy is all about. So there is that factor. Number three, I think, there is one issue on which I need to, take on from where General Dua left off. Look, to say that, look, what happened in Jammu, for example, is something which is part and parcel of, how the dynamics of terrorism operates. I understand that there were gaps and other stuff. But does it take us 3 years to wake up to that? Because the real insurgency in Jammu really starts around 2021. In the corporate sector, Barkha, they look at, financial analysts look at corporate results every 3 months. They see what are the kind of sales, what are the kind of revenues, what are the kind of losses being made. And on the basis of that, they start making their assessment of whether a company is going up or going down. Okay, and the stock market moves accordingly. You should have something similar on the security front. When the first attacks happened in Jammu and they were directed against Indian Army, the security forces should have woken up that, okay, this is a material change in the situation. Dheere dheere karke they kept happening. And until now, when suddenly there's been a series of 3 or 4 attacks, we've suddenly woken up that, oh, the situation in Jammu is going out of control. That's not the way how you do these things. So you need to be very, very sensitive. Even the first indication should wake you up on what might be happening. And always imagine the worst case scenario. But to go back to, our retaliation mode. So look, let us face one thing. Remember one thing. The Israelis retaliate every time. It does not mean that terrorism has stopped against Israel. But you have to keep taking the war into your enemy side if you really want to have a chance of survival. Otherwise, you will not have that chance. And
let me ask you, can I ask you a question on your sorry, go ahead.
A lot of people will argue, but there will be a lot of casualties. Casualties are happening even now. Your soldiers are dying even now. When they send in bad teams, their bad teams come not to attack civilians. They come to attack soldiers. And in many cases, they've beheaded soldiers and taken them away and taken their heads away as trophies, which have been then, flaunted across the LOC. Again, in the case of Jammu, the maximum casualties have been of soldiers. So the point is, your soldiers are dying anyways. I would rather that they go into the other guy's territory and kill half a dozen of them and then die, rather than, being out here, being ambushed out here and dying out here. So I am one of those who have to take the war to the enemy.
Yeah, okay, but I have a question on the Israel analogy. At this time, especially since General Katoch mentioned the need for a stated doctrine, one of the unspoken doctrines of India has clearly been that in all of our retaliations to Pakistan, we have never punished the civilians of Pakistan, right? Not knowingly, not consciously, not with awareness. Yes, in firing, when exchange of fire takes place, when the ceasefire didn't hold at the LOC, yes, of course. Israel doesn't have that doctrine. And that has been something that has been, India has been applauded for that doctrine. So the Israel analogy at this point, how do you respond to that? Sorry, Sushant.
That's not true. Barkha, that's not true. The Israelis have been extremely sensitive about civilian casualties. Yes, civilian casualties happen, but not because civilians are being deliberately targeted. They never target civilians deliberately. civilians might become collateral damage, and I hate this word collateral damage, but not because they are being, because every time even if they're going and bombing a building, there is that double tap system which they use. They warn people to get out of a building before they're going to bring it down. So number one, I don't agree with that assessment of yours. Number two, on this whole business of, we don't target civilians. I'm not saying that you target civilians, but if civilians are going to be staying around military camps and you're going to be targeting military camps and there are civilian casualties, just too bad. I would want to drive a wedge between the Pakistani civilian and and in any case in POK, they are not Pakistani civilians. They're Kashmiris. So I would very much want to draw a distinction between them, and I would very much advise them not to get close to the Pakistan army. Otherwise, if casualties happen, then just too bad.
Okay, that's extremely provocative at a time when the Israel analogy is, it's a political hot potato. We've had Congress leader Priyanka Gandhi Vadra just lashing out, in fact, at Israel, causing a big political row. But let's bring in the generals now. General Dua, since your point about Jammu and Kashmir being different was commented on by Sushant, do go ahead.
No, in the Jammu region, when these attacks started a couple of years ago, or shall I say restarted, because for last about a decade, Jammu region was comparatively peaceful, below a certain threshold, and we didn't have encounters over there. Sushant is right to say that attacks actually started, the Jammu region was activated in 2021. Although I was retired by then, I had retired by then, but the fact one can understand at that moment, our focus was so much on Eastern Ladakh towards China. Yes, we had pulled out a couple of formations, Rashtriya Rifle troops from the Jammu region. We had also taken out the extra army units that were deployed in the Jammu region, and they had been taken out because of comparative peace that existed over there. Let's also remember that this is the region of Jammu and below, Jammu and south of it does not come under Northern Command. It comes under Western Command. It has an international border, which means on the borders it is BSF and not the army. So there is a plethora of agencies that get involved, and these are the fault lines that were exploited adroitly by Pakistan by sending in terrorists over here. I do agree that we should have woken up then, and we could have reacted forcefully then. Unfortunately, as I see it, I think the due attention was not given or could not be given. I cannot say which, but the fact remains that today, when things are hotting up like anything over the last 2 months, that's why now the army has been pushed in for a better response. We need to create turbulence for the terrorists in those areas, in the mountainous jungles of Jammu region, especially the Pir Panjal area or Doda Bardwa area. Like we did in Sarfinash in 2003, a massive operation was launched where they were all pushed up, shaken out of their comfort zones. That's what we need to do at the present moment, and I think that's what the army is going to do now. Last week that we have moved more than 3,000 troops, including special forces.
General Shukla, I have a question. The army's official statement calls the infiltrator as an intruder. They've been very careful. I was wrestling. Okay, what do I call this guy? Because it's Pakistan's bat team targeting an army bunker at the line of control. So it's not clear, is this guy an intruder? Some reports have suggested he's irregular. What did you make of the use of the word intruder? I guess the army is being cautious. I don't know. But there seems to be that question that arises. And the second question is that are we now headed towards a renewed phase of enhanced military escalation with Pakistan?
Barkha, to this point about, these narrow definitions, intruder, infiltrator, doesn't make any difference. As far as the soldier on the LC is concerned, anybody who tries to cross the LC will be knocked off. He should be shot dead, and then we can keep analyzing to death what he is. So that's the short point about intruder, infiltrator. But see, the larger issue, I want to critique my own ilk positively critique the armed forces in terms of what Sushant had raised initially. That is, today, the Indian military seems to be responding to change. We should come to a stage where we drive change in our immediate strategic environment. And I'll give you two examples of this. What does it mean? One is that we should control the escalatory ladder, and not when he has done this, now we respond. Similarly, with China, put in place such deterrence that we don't need to war fight. So good, robust, wise militaries ensure deterrence. They don't need to war fight. And so here now, let me just elaborate on this in terms of our threats, Western horizons, northern borders, and I'll also mention the seas very briefly. See what happens along the western borders. When you react, it takes very long. Dhruv was my boss in 15 Corps. If you move an RR battalion from the hinterland to the LC, it takes 6 months for 1 year for it to settle down. If you vacate RR battalion, you move it from northern Baramulla, you will vacate the grid. It will take 2 years.
But sir, but sorry to interrupt you. But the cold start doctrine was meant to address exactly this: that deployment should be able to be done rapidly as needed with integrated battle groups.
Barkha, you're making may I just correct you? Cold start was for the planes, for the armored mech formations. Cold start didn't apply to the J&K. It was in an entirely different context, in the mechanized context. But see, just let me complete the point here. Anybody who served there, I'm not making any excuses, but it is very difficult to ensure vigilance, alertness levels through the rank and file of 6 to 7 lakh troops. I have great sympathy for the commander. It's not easy to do. Now, the other point, we are talking of a punitive response. We have to look very carefully at the nature and responsing of our punitive response. It's not that every time you respond, things will go right. They may go terribly wrong. Look at the Israelis. How many of their operations have gone wrong? Do we have the stomach to take on these reverses? So, it needs far greater attention beyond the military. I'll give you an example from China. Look at their rocket force. I've been raising this for a couple of years now. See what happened on the 14th of April in Israel and what took them to defend their skies. Arrow 2, Arrow 3, Iron Dome, American Aegis, UK, US fighters, the entire sensors of the US Missile Defense Agency. What response do we have in terms of the Chinese rocket force? Now, this is not something for the military. It needs larger resourcing. So it's a function of defense budgets. This point somebody made, I want to reinforce it. This year, China, when its economy is tottering at 3%, 2%, some people say half, it has increased its defense expenditure by 7.2%. Are the Chinese callous? So they are resourcing the military even in times of economic weakness. In our case, the perennial narrative is that unless we grow at 8 and 9, we cannot resource the military. So if you don't do this, you will continuously react to change. Now, in the current context, it may sound utterly utopian, but I make one more point. This is the time to turn to the seas. The plan is already there. If you don't do it, in terms of a long-term threat, you will be in for a strategic squeeze. LAC, the West, and the seas. So while there are a lot of tactical issues, readiness, all that, is a matter of detailing. These larger issues, now that India is entering the big power competition, we have to handle with a long-term perspective. Otherwise, as Sushant said, while we do a lot, we will always be reacting to change and not driving change. So we need to see in the larger sense, how can we drive change in our strategic environment?
So that realistic question that you pose, what happens if punitive action goes wrong? Let me put that to General Katoch, and then I'll give Sushant a brief last word because we need to close. General Katoch.
I didn't say what happens.
Sorry, General Shukla.
I just wanted to say I'm not, being cautious and saying don't do it because it will go wrong. I'm saying
I understand. You're asking the country. You're asking the country a question. I understand. I understood your question. You're saying that for people who are sitting around saying "Kyun nahi zyada kuch karte," the "Kyun nahi zyada kuch karte" comes with possibly more coffins coming home. Punitive action can go wrong. Sorry,
military calibration. That's what I'm arguing. I'm arguing for military calibration.
I understand. General Katoch, please go ahead.
Look at it as this.
Can we unmute General Katoch, please? Yeah, go ahead, sir. Yeah.
The way I look at it is this. anytime we impose costs on Pakistan, and I'm talking specifically of the Pakistan army, what we are doing now is we are trying to sort of strengthen the grid, trying to knock out the terrorists and all that. You see, killing the terrorist is immaterial. I make it very, very clear. There are 20 of them, we'll kill 20, 20 more will come, we'll kill them all. The 40 or 50 will come, we'll kill them all. Once a person has become a terrorist, his count has started. We will kill him, period. His life is over. It's just a matter of time now, so he will be dead. But that is not the cost I'm talking about. The cost has to be on the Pakistan military, specifically on the military. And I would suggest that based on what the Prime Minister has now stated, and it should be made very clear to the politicians, to the ruling dispensation, as well as to the opposition, that there are going to be costs for Pakistan. And in the retaliation, there will be costs for India too. Now, we have to bear those costs. The point is, you cannot inflict pain without getting pain on yourself. And we have to be prepared for that, right? What, when General Shukla said there will be, something will go wrong. I don't think it's going to go wrong in that sense. What will go wrong is that while doing things, there will be cost to us also. We have to bear those costs. I make a very specific point. Please destroy those posts, obliterate them from the face of the earth, which are giving support to these terrorists. So if there are 2 platoons located at some particular place, 2 platoon posts are there, situated 3 to 5 kilometers apart, and the terrorists have come through that area, well, I'm afraid both those platoons have to be destroyed completely. And if the Pakistanis respond to that and they start hitting 3 or 4 of our posts, then you escalate it 10 times that amount. And if they respond, you keep the escalated at it. If the whole thing flares up, so be it. But every time, if the Pakistanis are assured of a firm response, that is deterrence. If they think that no, India will stop after some time because, the Americans will say peace and then people will say, aap to Gandhi wale hain, aap shant ho jao. I think they've got to get the idea that, theek hai, we will not stop. The only message which they will understand is the message which is now being given by Israel to Hamas, where Hamas is now saying, "Arey bhai, we just killed a few 1,000 plus people and took 200-300 prisoners. Why is Israel retaliating in that manner?" I don't know. I think the Israelis are justified. They should, you cannot just go there and start killing civilians and then say there'll be no retaliation. There will be retaliation. And I think that message has to go to Pakistan too. You cannot get away with it.
Okay.
That is the underlying message, regardless of the cost. And if India is prepared to buy the cost, you have achieved deterrence. That's the way I look at it.
So Israel has come up again and again in this conversation. Sushant and General Katoch drawing one kind of analogy, and General Shukla saying that, look, even a state like Israel, things can go wrong. And Sushant, I don't know that analogy holds, because even the Americans wedded to the Israelis. Half of US Congress ended up boycotting Benjamin Netanyahu when he went to DC. There are those who argue that Israel had the moral authority after the Hamas terror attack, but has begun to lose it after its refusal to back off from civilians and the mass sort of killings of civilians in Gaza. So that is, of course, a separate debate. But I'm just saying, for everybody drawing an analogy with Israel, there are costs that come with that too, geopolitically and morally. Last word to you.
Okay, so Barkha, 2 or 3 points I want to make. One, on something which General Shukla said. And the worrying part is that rather than even a nominal increase in the defense budget, we have actually reduced the defense budget this time. If you look at the revised estimates of 23-24, and compare that with the allocations made for 24-25 in the budget, it's a lower figure. Okay, so if we are wanting to do all the kinds of stuff that the talking heads on your show, all 4 of us are proposing, then I don't know how this is going to happen. One. Number 2, on the Israel analogy, again, I don't have to go and follow the Vokes in America who don't even know what their gender is. I don't need them to tell me whether Israel, what it is doing is right or wrong. People who are obsessed with pronouns, I don't take seriously anyways. And in any case, maybe 100 people didn't turn up. Maybe they had constituency compulsions. Maybe they had some other reasons for not attending that particular event. But I think it is very important for us to draw lessons from our own experience. Since we are talking about Kargil, and we've just celebrated Kargil Vijay Diwas, When Kargil happened, Barkha, you were an active journalist, you were on the war front. I don't know how many people remember, I'm sure the generals do, maybe even you do. When Kargil started and the Indian response started, what was the international response? Everybody was counseling restraint to us. Everybody was towing the Pakistani line, including the Americans who were telling us that, India should show restraint, India should come to the talks table, India should talk to the Pakistanis. It was only when the government of India said that, no, we will not come to the talks table, we will expel these guys with the use of force, that the boot shifted on the other foot. So we should take this lesson. And if the Israelis are doing something similar, to some extent, I would say that they are justified. Okay, I don't hold it against them. What Hamas did and the way people celebrated what Hamas did, I think is unconscionable. And for the same people to now play victim, I don't agree with it. And finally, on this whole thing about casualties, yes, you have to be rest assured that when you fight a war or when you get into this kind of a scrap, there will be losses. But there will be reverses. Even when 71 war happened, there were days when there were major reverses which the forces faced, and this was a very well-planned war effort. So in war, things will go wrong. In conflict, things always go wrong. So you have to steel your people that they don't start doing this normal breast beating kind of, Rona Dhona, that, one plane has fallen, what group wing commander Abhinandan has gone, he's become a captive. Now the whole focus shifted from retaliating to Pakistan's retaliation to getting back the Air Force officer. We should have upped the ante at that point of time, and we should have gone in with even greater force. But were we prepared to do that? Did we have the wherewithal to be able to do that? And some of the stories which I've heard of that time are scary. There's a lot of, chest thumping that we keep doing. But have we ensured the kind of defense preparedness and the superiority that we actually need? I don't buy the numbers thing. You might have a 1.5 million strong army. That doesn't matter. Okay. You might have, an Air Force which is twice or thrice the size of Pakistani Air Force. But what is the quality of that? And you've had former air chiefs saying, oh, the MiG-21 is a great aircraft. Yaar, 1960 ka aircraft hai, kab tak wo great aircraft hoga? Maybe in 2061 also you will say it's a great aircraft, let's keep flying it, because we haven't been able to take a decision to replace the aircraft by modern aircraft. Is this the way you do defense planning? And then every defense minister, every year, every defense budget will stand up in parliament and say, I have made such and such allocation, but if the defense forces require, I will give them more. It's like what I tell my wife, कि यार ठीक है इतने पैसे हैं अभी कल को 2 किलो सब्जी और चाहिए होगी तो मेरे से और पैसे ले लेना. Is this how you do defense planning? You ask the generals out here, you have to look 10, 15, 20 years. You have to see the revolution in military affairs which is taking place. You have to prepare yourself to get new technologies and counter the technologies which other people have. Are we doing all of that? Are we doing it at the pace we should be doing it? Are we doing it at the pace at which the challenges are coming to us? We are not doing it. And then, we'll keep doing chest thumping and making speeches. I'm afraid that's not the way it works.
Okay, very impassioned last comments there. Do any of the generals want to respond? General Dutt, General Shukla wanted to come in. General Shukla? Yeah, General Shukla.
I just want to make, a quick 2 to 3 points. See, the Indian armed forces have no option but to remain prepared across the spectrum, from proxy war to high intensity prolonged combat. And I'll tell you here the problem, what happens. Defense budgets and all, what is the problem? From nowhere we hear that, somebody spins a yarn. Ki dekho, China kana, we will take care of China. Don't worry. You take care only of the gray zone bit in China. Now, these are all entirely facile assurances. Nobody can assure you about this. You will not know how the conflict spirals to high intensity combat. And therefore these defense budget allocations, there is no constancy. Look, China is talking of becoming a world-class military by 2047. And look at how progressively it's moving towards that. So Barkha, I will really request you, we will do a great service to India if you can do 2 or 3 shows on these larger national security issues, instead of just discussing the day something happens in J&K. That, the shaping of our national security mind space has to be done in that respect. And lastly, I would once again caution, in the larger context, Pakistan remains a pest. China is the threat. Pakistan can be taken care of. All that is happening here, I'm not undermining it, should not make us take our eyes off the larger China challenge.
I think we can all agree on that last sentence. Pakistan remains a pest, but China is the real threat. And to recognize China as the adversary, as the larger adversary, as the more dangerous and the more insidious adversary, and that geopolitics is a big part of what's happening. Sushant, you want a quick word there? Can we unmute Sushant? Yeah.
Okay, so I don't disagree with what General Shukla is saying. I entirely agree with it, except with a caveat. China is our primary threat. I think that's a no-brainer. But China is a threat, a state-to-state threat, right? It's in the normal, it's a kind of a normal threat in that sense. The insidious threat comes from Pakistan. And from the Pakistani side, it is more of a civilizational conflict, which they have made, we haven't made. So I think we need to be very clear about the threat we face from China.
But if China and Pakistan are in concert, are comrades in arms, then China is not a normal threat. And no, China is not a normal threat given what it's doing in Ladakh.
China's threat will still be the most significant threat we have, but it is the threat which, a big state versus a small or a relatively small state, it's that dynamic which is at play. It is a state which is becoming a major power, which is then trying to throw its weight around, and we are going to resist it. It is that kind of a equation which is developing with China. In the case of Pakistan, it's a completely different thing. It's far more visceral and virulent than what it is with China. With China, it is a normal kind of a conflict situation in that sense. I don't know if I'm becoming clear on that. But
I think now General Shukla wants to respond, and please, General Dua and General Katoch, if you want to comment for quick last words. General Shukla, please.
It took such great effort for the Indian Army institutionally to take its, to focus on China while taking its eyes off Pakistan. It was such a colossal effort. I know it. Sushant, please don't get us to start doing the reverse now. China is the real threat.
Okay, the debate carries on. We leave it there. I think we leave it there because it's a whole different, another hour we need on China and Pakistan, and I will be sure to organize it. Sushant, General Shukla, General Katoch, and General Dua, thank you. And to our audience, thank you for watching. See you tomorrow. Have a great weekend. It's great to see you here. Thank you for watching our work. If you haven't subscribed yet, don't forget to click the bell icon and subscribe to Mojo Story and support independent, robust journalism.